across your content through TikTok. Let's start from
Right.
there, all right? And, you know, TikTok, it's interesting because on TikTok, you have a lot of psychics, mediums, readers, light workers, seers, etc., which I love because it just makes spirituality and what we do accessible to people.
Yeah.
And it just provides information and knowledge, higher knowledge to people. But there's the other side of TikTok where you do have a lot of scammers and a lot of people out there pretending to be mediums, psychics, astrologers, tarot readers. And then that creates this distrust between people and us, what we are doing. And then I came across your content, and I love spiritual talk generally, because I'm just always curious to see what kind of content people put out there, etc. And I came across your content. I'm like, yeah, she's a real deal. So I've come across a lot of other people, and you're like, what are you saying? You're not even reading. You're not reading people. You're scamming people. And I was drawn to you, but it's been like, I've been thinking for a couple of months now to reach out to you. But again, timing is everything, as we both know.
Yeah.
Timing is very important. And the timing is the right time is now, pretty much. And I'm glad you're here because I want us to discuss, as we're both mediums, and what we were saying before we started recording this video is that we have sort of similar paths on how we started. So we were both professionals. You were in recruitment, and as far as I know, you were about to start your own business. Am I?
So I did start my own business. So I went into recruitment whenever I was 21. And then I sort of climbed the corporate ladder in recruitment, learned the ropes. And then I started my own business in recruitment. So I had my own recruitment company for like 2 and a bit years. So I'd experienced like significant growth with that. Like, we weren't huge. We were a team of 4 people, but it was good to see things grow, but I just wasn't passionate about it anymore. I started, whenever, I used to feel so excited about getting up in the morning and going to work. And then all of a sudden I'm finding myself like just really burdened, and everything felt so hard. And I wasn't really that passionate about the business. So what I actually did was I thought, okay, well, I really enjoy selling. I've always been really good at it. Let's move into something different. And I moved into the tech industry. I actually went to work for a client of mine that had a SaaS platform. So I took the move that direction, and it was okay. It was better. I had a fresh start. I had a change. It definitely rejuvenated the energy in me. But it wasn't really long before that dissatisfaction, I guess, is probably the best word, started to creep in again. And then all of a sudden my confidence started to go as well. And I think whenever your confidence starts to go, whenever you're in a sales position, it's very, very hard to keep going. It's hard, it impacts, whenever you're in a target driven role, it really does impact you. And I had a couple of changes in quite a relatively short period of time, like whereas maybe only in a role for a year or 9 months. And you just start to notice that pattern creeping up. And obviously from my recruitment days, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I was a hiring manager, I wouldn't consider me. What am I doing? And I knew that there was something needed to change, but I still at that point wasn't really sure what it was, because I was just thinking, well, if I don't do this, what do I do? And then my whole life fell apart, and here I am.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So I will assume that you had your spiritual awakening, because obviously it's not like suddenly we wake up one day and we're like, oh, I think I'm a psychic. Oh, I think I'm a medium. It starts very, very early on, where you start having experiences, maybe when you're little. When I was little, for instance, I was seeing, feeling things, getting information, and I was confused. So I couldn't really understand what was going on until I turned 11 or 12, where I started getting into the metaphysical, getting into tarot,
Mhm.
astrology, and understanding what's happening. So I assume when you were in the tech industry and you were feeling that way, you were going through the early depression stage of the spiritual
Yeah.
awakening,
Yeah,
right?
very, very much so. And I had even got a deck of tarot cards at that time. So in between that, I'd also had cancer, and me and my husband were separating. So I'd had a couple of really turbulent things that were happening in around the same time. Like my husband and I separated, and then I found out I had cancer the following week. So it was that state of trauma almost that really propelled my path. It almost like really sped it up. Where I had been just drifting along in work, trying to think like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And then all of that happened, and it's like, oh, and it really just, it was like a shock to my system, I think. And it really started to propel me to turn inwards and sped things up a bit. And it was like, it was almost like the universe was communicating with me, even though I wasn't hearing and seeing at that time. I just felt like I was getting signs from the universe and synchronicities and things. Although my life was falling apart, there was other aspects of my life where it just was like, this is too good to be true. Things just seemed to be falling into place for me. Like the universe was conspiring to help me, and I noticed that. And then it just all came crumbling down again. Whenever I had my dark night of the soul.
I know. It's a
Yeah.
tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I've done videos on that, and I've talked about this a lot. And then how did you develop? So how did you develop your mediumship skills?
Well, whenever you talk about, your childhood, my experience was a little bit different. So I was never aware of seeing anything. Now,
Mm,
whenever I think now about my clairvoyance and everything and how I see stuff now, I can understand how I would have missed that and not
mhm.
realize that I was clairvoyant, because clairvoyance starts off so subtle. Like it's like your imagination, and you just you put it down to that. So I had never ever thought to myself, oh, I'm clairvoyant. I'd never recalled an instance where I seen a spirit form in front of me or anything like that. Although there was definitely a lot of times when I knew information that I shouldn't have known. And even whenever I was working in recruitment, like I would have got somebody's CV or resume and just known that they were the person that was going to get the job. And I hadn't even spoken to them yet. And, my manager would have been saying to me, like, don't be so ridiculous. This just, no, no. And I would have been like, they're going to get the job. And he's like, they're not even going in for an interview. And they always would have got the job. So I've had a lot of things like that in my life. But when you have lived your life that way your whole life, you don't know that you're different and that you have a gift. You don't label it as a spiritual gift. You just assume, well, everybody must be like this and I'm just more in tune with it. So whenever it came to developing, I bought myself a deck of tarot cards and a little book, and I just obsessed about a guy on repeat for about a year, and eventually I started seeing things. So
Yeah.
it pretty much started like that. It's almost like the universe gave me a focus, and I became so obsessed by these cards and trying to learn them and interpret them, and I was very heavily focused on the book meanings. That's definitely one thing that I would change now going back. I would definitely try to use my intuition a lot more. But the cards helped me develop for sure. I also connected in with I don't know if you have them where you are. I know that they do be all over the world, but a spiritualist church. And
Mm-hmm.
they had a development circle. So I started going there. But although I was aware that there was this connection, I still wasn't really receiving information through. I would have been sat in this circle with other mediums saying to me, I know that you've got some information there. I know. And all I was thinking is, I've got a sore head, my ears are buzzing, but I can't access. It's like I couldn't access this
Yeah.
information, basically. So I had that for about a year where it was very, very frustrating. I felt things changing and my ears were ringing all the time. I felt like I had constant tinnitus. I would have been getting dizzy spells, sluggish periods where I was just so tired. And I just intuitively knew that I was having a spiritual awakening very, very early on. And I don't think I'd even heard the term spiritual awakening before that. There was no conscious thought in my mind of even what a spiritual awakening was, but yet I knew that I was having one. And then
Yeah.
whenever I started to Google what is a spiritual awakening, and it was like, oh, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that. Oh my God, I'm in this one as well. Yeah.
Tick, tick, tick. All the
Yeah.
boxes are ticked. Oh, damn.
Yeah. So from a development point of view, it felt very, very sluggish for me. Very, very sluggish. And then I started to realize that if I really tuned into the card and used the imagery, it's almost as though there was something in that image would have lifted off the page and suddenly I was seeing it in my mind's eye. And that
Yes.
was like, wow. So my clairvoyance was probably one of the main things that kicked in. Obviously, yes, I was getting things intuitively and, through claircognizance, but probably not even really being aware of it. I wanted to hear, I wanted to see, I wanted something that I felt was a bit more tangible. So whenever I started to get clairvoyant images in that way, and it would have just started almost like the image would have lifted off the page and would have been moving. And then all of a sudden the story just started to play out in my head. And that for me was mind blowing. So I would have seen the image, but not heard anything. And then I kept working with that. So I would have just pulled cards constantly. I started reading for other people. I started to read photos. I joined a Facebook group or a couple of Facebook groups for like practicing mediums and developing psychics. And I offered, can I do a reading for you? Does anybody have a question? Can I pull you a card and give me feedback? And that's what I started to do. And it just really progressed gradually from there. So there was a lot of uncomfortable situations and a lot of like, oh, I don't know why I'm getting this. Oh, this feels a bit awkward to give to someone. But there was a lot of times when I was being told like, oh my God, that's so amazing. How did you know that? How did you pick up on that? I remember there was some girl, I had seen her sitting on the beach going through what looked like a lunchbox of all these like stones or something. And she says, oh, I've just been on the beach collecting pebbles. And I was sitting going through all the different pebbles. I was like, that's crazy. And I even seen her washing them in the sink. And she had done that whenever she got back.
So it's like remote viewing. My remote viewing was crazy too at the beginning. It was just like I could like describe to people that I was reading the room that they were in.
Yeah.
I could describe like where they like placed items, and that I was surprised. I would surprise myself too. I assume you too. But at the same time, I was trying to keep myself grounded, and I'm like, stay grounded, because this might go away.
Yeah. It's so hard though. And I was so excited. Everything amazed me. Everything was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So it was very, very hard to stay grounded. I do find it a bit more easier to stay grounded now because although I still have those wow moments, I'm a bit like, yeah, I because I suppose I've come to terms with my gift and I'm using it every day. I'm not like, oh my God, I can't believe I got that right. I'm not at that stage anymore. Although I still love getting the validation. Whenever I was at the start, it just felt like every little thing was just so amazing. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I did. And pinching myself every day. So I've calmed down a little bit now. So still continue with the validation. I love that universe. But yeah, it's just exciting to be able to have the gift, but as you say, stay grounded with it and be able to put it to good use.
Yeah, don't let that ego start. Like sometimes I would catch myself at the beginning, like ego going like, I'm so good, I'm so great, because I'm getting further. And then you're like, no. Stay grounded because you've got that.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that side of it as well, where I definitely was just getting up on my soapbox and, adamant, no, I am certain that this is accurate because I am just so good. But the universe would be very quick, and they have been very quick to knock me down a peg or two with that in terms of giving me wrong information and making me feel embarrassed and putting me in uncomfortable positions. But I probably needed that to help grind me a little bit and to bring me back down to earth and remind me that yes, I have a gift, but I am only getting the information that they will grant me, and it has to be coming from a place of heart, not an ego. So I do notice actually whenever I'm reading from a place of ego or I'm trying to impress someone, that's whenever they start to give me the stuff that maybe isn't quite accurate. It's just reminding me that, you work on our terms, not on yours.
100%. And you touched upon something that is important for us to put it out there, that it's important to give when you're starting off, when you have come to terms regarding your abilities and your gifts, it's very important to start reading people and not friends, anyone who is willing and is open to be read. But at the
Yeah.
same time, one of the struggles that I had at the very, very, very beginning was not second guessing the information that was coming through. You're like, because the problem is sometimes you're like, is it me making this up? Or is this information that I'm receiving? Go for it. Don't second guess it. Let it come out. Blurt it out. That's the best way for you to start reading people, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I actually think it's easier to read strangers because especially at the start, because if you're still in that period where you're like, oh, I don't know if this is me or if this is my own thoughts, or it's less chance of that happening whenever it's a stranger. So if you get something and you don't know this person, then there's not really a logical, well, I've got it because, whereas when it's a friend or someone that you know and you get something, you're like, oh, but is that in my head because we had this conversation and this happened and have I seen this on Facebook? So I find it much easier to read for strangers, and I would really encourage people to read for strangers. I think even over and above reading for yourself as well, I think reading for people that you don't know is really important and can help you develop much easier.
100%. And that was one of the questions. Do you read for yourself? I don't. I can't. Like
I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. So I started to get information for myself very, very early on. And it was very hard to trust it because I was still learning to have the trust in that information. So again, I'm like, but is this my ego? Is this because I'm thinking something or because I really want it to happen? But yeah, I got a lot of support from spirit in that way. But sometimes they'll give me crap as well. Like if I'm asking the same question over and over and over again, then they'll just start giving me the wrong information. It's like whenever I have somebody coming, for the same reading over and over again, I just get to the stage where I know to tell them like this isn't going to work. Like you need to stop. You need to stand back. But usually they'll give me a lot of support without interfering in the human experience. They really want me to have that human experience and to let things unfold naturally and to learn to be patient and to wait on things happening and not to be reading into situations too much. But I do get a lot of like guidance even in terms of my career and things like that from spirit. I have a spirit guide specifically that I don't know, like obviously we'll never really be fully aware of exactly how it is over in the spirit realm, but no matter what time of day, I could be laying in bed at like 3 a.m. awake and going to the bathroom and she will be there. Like if I call on her, she's there. So I don't know whether she just sits there. She refers to it as her perch. So she does sit there, but she'll only appear to me, I guess, if it's needed, whether I'm doing a reading for somebody and it's needed, or if I start to ask questions or they want to bring some information through to me. So I know that I am lucky in that way because a lot of people I'm aware of can't read for themselves or choose not to because they're not sure on the information that they get. But the information that I get for myself would be just as clear as what I would get for somebody else if I'm doing a reading. And I am grateful for that. But one of my lessons is definitely not overusing that and not being hyper dependent on that, and experiencing life, making mistakes and taking wrong turns and, dealing with the consequences, because those are the things that are actually really important on our existence. They're part of our growth. So it's really important that we do that.
I agree. And sometimes we don't need to know everything. We have to go through it. We have to go through the challenges and everything. And just to clarify, it's not like I can't, it's like sometimes I choose not to. And I do get information from spirit about certain things that it's like it's like a warning or to protect me. Or yes, I get that, but it's not like I sit down every week or every 2 weeks and I'll have like a whole session with myself, kind of like think, oh, how's my week gonna go? How's my month gonna go? All that. I kind of, because I read so much for the other people and I predict things, if you will. I'd rather not do it for myself. I don't even do it for my husband. I will do it for sometimes for his business stuff. Like if he is sort of doubtful about something, I'll give him my 2 cents, but I don't get involved in that, because I think that we all need to kind of live our life and go through what we're meant to go through and find our path, unless, you know, there's something major in your life and you need guidance. And
Yeah.
also you're a life coach too, right?
Yeah.
Because you do coaching, I do coaching as well. I call it more spiritual coaching. And I love that, because what people don't read is not just like a session where we're going to say we're going to connect you to a deceased loved one and say, okay, this is what's coming through, you are loved, you know, your loved ones around you, this is what I want to tell you. This is more so guiding people through challenges and hurdles and roadblocks that they go through. And I love that part, because it's spiritual, it's psychology, it's empowerment, it's enlightenment. How did you get into the coaching?
So it's a very good question. I had a Reiki session. Now, this was before I had really embarked on my spiritual awakening. Or it's probably was very, very in the very early days when I had first some things come up, and I just suddenly felt like the change of career that I needed was to become a life coach. I wanted to be able to help people over their own hurdles. But again, this was before I was aware of my spiritual connection. So I always had life coaching in the back of my head. I'd had a really profound session of Reiki, and it was the very first time that I'd experienced Reiki healing. And I was on the way home and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried for nearly 24 hours. That session had just obviously released a lot of emotion for me. And life coach just was in my head whenever I was driving back from the lady's house back home. So this sort of came out of nowhere. And then whenever I started down the spiritual path, I must admit, although I do get people's loved ones connecting in and I do the evidential mediumship whenever it comes up, I don't really do a lot of that. Mostly it's the message in my readings that is more important than the person that's delivering it. So I think I've always been pushed down that path by spirit without even realizing it. It's almost like they wanted me down this path. So I've always worked with a particular spirit guide, and I've always had a dedicated connection, which I understand not everybody works that way. But sometimes my guide is the only person that I'm connecting to through a whole reading. And from start to finish, they will bring the information through. Obviously, I do ask a lot of questions, and I do encourage the people that sit for me to ask a lot of questions if we're doing a reading. And in fact, in my shorter sessions that I might do over email, for example, I specify for them to put down some questions or at least some areas of their life that they want help with. But more and more what I found was my guide bringing information through around, hidden traumas that they hadn't dealt with. And she would have been taking me back to their childhood or something, or into a past life, and bringing stuff up around, the childhood experience that they had, or a trauma that they hadn't dealt with. Maybe something to do with their current lifestyle, if they're living off junk food and not taking care of themselves. So it's all of that sort of information that is helpful for a person who is looking to improve themselves and to maybe take themselves on a healing journey if they're not already on one. And I appreciate we're always healing. I know that, but we do obviously do it more. We have periods in our life where we're more conscious of what we're doing. And it's, more of a decision that we take. So that was really how it all started to unfold. And that's what I get passionate about. And I do get people coming asking about love and when is he coming? When is she coming? What's in store for my love life? And I do enjoy dealing with those still, but I get much more enjoyment from the life coaching parts. However, I do find that my guide will even turn one of those questions into okay, well, no, nothing's really going to change at the minute. However, one of the things that you really need to focus on is, this about yourself, focus on that about yourself. So there's always a way that spirits seem to turn it into like a little mini coaching session for somebody to give them some guidance and support on where they need to focus. I actually had somebody who had done a reading. I had done a reading for her, and she says, I didn't want any guidance. That's not what I come for. And I was like, oh, I don't like, that's just, yeah, I'm just the messenger.
That's rude.
Yeah. I don't, I think she was just in the position where she wasn't ready to hear
Yeah.
what spirits were bringing through for her. It wasn't what she was hoping to hear, and she just wasn't ready to hear it. And I get it, but I was just thinking, like, you've come for a spiritual guidance reading. I'm not really sure what you expected, other than to get guidance and some insight into where things are going or why they may not go the way that you want them to. But I try to remind myself, they're coming from their own wounded place. And just because they have that sort of aspect to it now, or that perception, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be in that way.
But at the same time, when they come to us for reading, it means they're ready, or there is something there for them, right? So it's spirit and their guides pushing them that way. And that's a reminder as well.
Exactly. So I always look at it as, even if they're not ready to hear the information, what we're doing in that session is planting the seed. But also what spirit are using is that person to put us maybe into a more uncomfortable position where we're having to deal with some backlash, or a negative comment, or somebody that isn't ready to hear what we're saying and is quite vocal about it, because we will need to be able to deal with those situations as well. We need to be resilient to those sorts of conversations and those sorts of people. So it's always a learning. It's that case of people come onto our path for a reason. So we're helping plant the seed with them for their future growth, where they'll look back on the reading maybe 5 years from now and be like, wow, she was right. But also we're building up our resilience and building up our tolerance perhaps as well, and our understanding to other people, that we're all on different paths.
And you said people might come to you for, let's say, love reading. Like, when am I going to meet my soulmate? Or, when am I going to get married? Will I have children? And if you're coming with that question, and we can see that there is a blockage there, something is blocking you from attracting love, or even money, or even a raise, a promotion, or something like that, it means that you're here because you need to work on something. And we are here, we're the medium. That's the word, medium. We're the conduit. We're here to tell you things that you're not aware of yet. And that's why I always encourage my clients, take notes. You won't remember everything after this reading. It's overwhelming, but you'll have something to look back on in a year from now, a few months from now, and it's all going to make sense then. Because a lot of people are like, not a lot of people, but I've had people where they're like, I'm not sure if that reading, a lot of stuff that you told me didn't really resonate. And I'm like, it doesn't resonate now.
Yeah.
But it will when things shift, when you're ready.
Yeah. So sometimes, yourself, you'll do a reading, and from start to finish, the person is just coming away, oh my God, that was amazing. Everything resonated so well. But then there's other times whenever things don't make sense to someone. And I always encourage them, to just take it away. And yet we don't always understand how we're going to get from A to B. We don't always understand that path. That's not for us to understand. If someone would have told me that I was going to be working as a psychic medium and life coach, I would have laughed at them. I honestly, it was so far from the path that I would have thought that I would have been on. And I have no shame in saying that. Yes, I love what I do now, but it was never a planned intention that I thought, ultimately I want to be a psychic. I want to be on TikTok. I want to, it was never in my plan. My focus was very much in the corporate world and climbing like the corporate ladder. And it's only really through life's events that were hidden from me, because I didn't need to know about them at that time, that actually my life took a turn. In fact, I actually had an email. It was a lovely email from a girl. I actually had posted it to my TikTok channel because I thought it was a really important thing for us to remember, because she had a reading from me and it didn't make any sense at all. She actually said she came away and thought I was just not, I wasn't a legitimate psychic, either that, or I had sent her the wrong reading, because this was a short email reading. And she just said it just didn't make sense at all. And she says it's all happened. everything has happened. So she couldn't see it at the time. It wasn't logical to her,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it has all happened. And she was just like, I'll definitely be back. And I thought that's a really important thing for people to be aware, because sometimes we do come away thinking that was rubbish. And I have done it myself. Whenever I went for my first psychic reading, she was a clairvoyant medium. She told me that I was a clairvoyant and I wasn't tapping into it. And I came away thinking like, what rubbish. I just thought like, just honestly, the eye rolling that went on, I just thought that is so ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, to even think that I am a clairvoyant and that I wouldn't know about it, like, and here I am.
And it's incredible how one thing that I learned through my journey as a psychic medium is that we do develop different gifts, or we develop. Develop is the wrong word. I'll speak for myself. I have found that I have received or gained new gifts. So from the beginning of my journey, where I was more so a medium rather than a psychic, I'm also all the clairs. So I'm clairaudient, I'm clairvoyant, I'm clairsentient. I've got all the clairs, but it didn't start off that way. It started off clairsentient. It started clairaudient and clairsentient, and then I went clairvoyant, etc. And then I realized that the more I work with people, the more I give, the more I guide, the more I work with my guides in spirit, the more I get from them. So I am a lot more confident than I was, let's say, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I've been doing this for quite a while now. And I don't know if it was the same with you. And I'm always like, every time I'm like, I can't wait for the next one. Like, what's next?
Yeah. So it was very, very similar to me, but different clairs that came to the forefront.
Yeah.
Different, I guess spirit will always work with each individual person, how is best for that person. And I definitely was picking up things intuitively and through my claircognizance as well, without even really being aware of it for quite a while. So that was how I was getting information. But it was so, I guess, because it's not like a physical thing. It's not like you're seeing something or hearing something. So it felt like I couldn't trust it, really. Even though I was getting it reaffirmed, it still felt like, but did I get that? So I had the self-doubt. Then whenever I started using the cards and I started to get some more information clairvoyantly, and I realized that I had that ability, that was a bit like, oh, wow, this is amazing. So I seemed to be really leaning on that a lot and working with the cards constantly. I had a period in my path where I couldn't have done a reading without some cards in front of me. And then it gradually just came away. However, what I found is once I had sort of fine-tuned, I suppose, my clairvoyance to a certain extent, then that sort of seemed to dip back a little bit and I would have been starting to hear more. So it was almost like they took one away a little bit or pulled it back a bit and then give me something else. And then we worked with that for a bit. And honestly, mine was like a light switch. I literally had been working this way for a while, getting little bits, and all of a sudden I was sitting actually with my ex-husband one day. It was I was going into surgery the next day and he'd invited me in for a cup of tea whenever I was dropping my daughter off, and we were sitting chatting, and it was as though spirit had flicked a switch, because I had his grandfather come through and I sat and did a reading with him, and it was the clearest information that I've ever had in my life. And I literally was just for 30 minutes. No cards, no anything. And that was a real big wow moment. And whenever I left his house, I had always thought that I could connect to a celebrity. I'd always had this feeling that I would have the ability to connect to a celebrity. And I can remember searching online to try and find, well, like, do people do this? Is this a thing with mediums? And I'd even asked in one of the spiritual groups that I went to in the church, do you ever connect to celebrities? And nobody really had any experiences to share. And I was driving away from my ex-husband's house and thinking to myself, I think I can like connect to a celebrity now, because I tried a few times over a 6-month period. And I kept thinking Patrick Swayze, because I had loved Dirty Dancing. And then the next thing, Patrick Swayze came forward and I was like, Yeah, it just popped in and I was a bit like, oh, this is a bit awkward. I don't really know what to do now that you're here. And then all of a sudden somebody else came in beside him, and it turned out it was Chester Bennington, the lead singer from Linkin Park.
Oh yeah, I saw that you said that
Yeah.
that you're very connected to him, or he's very
Yeah.
connected to you. Wow.
Yeah, so it was really, really profound. That was really
I
whenever
know.
I
I
fully
know.
started to really embrace my mediumship. And I still, even then, I had those moments of doubts, and I was really doubting myself. You know, I'm thinking, well, why would Chester Bennington be speaking to me? Like,
True.
why is he speaking to me? How can I validate this? And I was asking him all these different questions, and he would have just said, look it up, look it up. So he was giving me information that I could then Google search about him. But even then, I'm thinking, yes, I wasn't a Linkin Park fan, and no, I didn't really know that much about him. However, have I read this somewhere else before, and I've just stored it in my memory? But then, I'm going through. But then, why would I be thinking of Chester Bennington? You know, out of everybody, I wouldn't have thought of Chester Bennington, you know, to step forward to me.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting path. But that was really the moment that everything was just whoop, it just took off.
Yeah, I love channeling celebrities, I have to say. It's my favorite part because they tell you a lot and you just get to know them. Even though they're in spirit form, you get to know the real them in a sense.
Yeah.
Do you know, does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
their personality comes through as well.
So one of the things that it's probably taught me is how close we can be to somebody without having met them. Because I have this connection with Chester, and he still would come through. I did go through a period where he didn't come through an awful lot, and he's maybe not with me as much as what he was at the start, but he will still come through. And it has really taught me the depth of connection that we can have to someone when it's a soul connection, because we have that connection and that deepness that I suppose you
True.
would get from an intimate connection. But yet I've never met him. I've never met him, but yet I feel closer to him sometimes than probably some of the people that I know on the earth plane. So it's really this, it makes you realize the veneer, the physical form can sometimes have when it comes to really forming a deep connection with
It,
people.
it's true. It's true. And people don't understand that. So if you're not going through it, or if you're not connecting, it's hard for us to explain why, because a lot of people just will say, oh, you're clout chasing, why are you channeling, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Because even though they're in spirit form and they're on the other side, there's still messages that are important for you, all of us, to hear and receive.
Exactly. But also I think they enjoy it. Like,
They
I
enjoy
honestly,
it.
I think they like, they, of course, they like to be remembered, and it's
Yeah.
nice for them. And, I tend to find, I don't know how it works for you, but I do tend to find whenever I'm watching like a documentary or something like that about somebody who has passed, they use that as their opportunity to step forward and maybe sit with you and watch it with you. And I have had someone actually that was sort of pointing out that actually you're sitting watching this. I've come here to join you, and you're sitting on your phone. That's really disrespectful. And I was like, oh, actually, I'm really sorry about that. But it's important lessons for us, and they still are. People will say to me if I have brought through a message, oh, well, you didn't get their family's permission, or you should have spoken to their family before you brought that message through. But to me, it's up to the spirit. The spirit person is still a person in their own right. They're not in a physical body, but they still have the authority to decide whether they want to bring a message through or not. It's not up to the person's family. But I think that's just a different perspective, perhaps, that people have.
But it goes back to, because there are scammers and people who are clout chasing, and that's unfortunately, you have a bad apple. It just takes one bad apple, right? So
Exactly.
that's the issue that we have to go. But what I'm really happy is the last 5 to 7 years, spirituality is becoming a bigger thing. People are awakening. They're more open to it, even skeptics. And I have to say that I've had people in the past that have actually booked readings with me, paid me just to berate me, because they're like, you're not real, like testing me. Test me. Have you ever had that? And I'm like, test me all you want. You're leaving here a believer and not a skeptic. And that's what happened.
I've definitely had people coming who wanted some sort of evidence. It's like they're coming as a skeptic. They're not sure. They're not
Yeah.
certain. I'm not sure that I've ever had a complete non-believer come proactively looking at reading, but there's definitely been a lot of people who are skeptical and want some sort of confirmation. However, I can relate to that myself because I was once that skeptic. I wasn't
Mm.
always like a firm believer in this stuff. I liked the idea of it, and I felt very comforted by there being we go somewhere after, and there is a higher power, and everything happens for a reason. But I was never convinced that there was something. And my grandma used to say to me, if there is an afterlife, she says, I'll find a way to come back. I'll come back to you. If I can get back, I will get back. After she had passed, I went and I seen a few mediums, and it wasn't concrete enough evidence really to
Mm.
make me believe. So I doubted for quite a long time, and it took me to have my own experience and my own path of awakening to really believe. And even at the start, I still wondered half the time if I maybe should have been on medication in a hospital somewhere. There was a couple of times that I thought maybe I'm just having a psychotic episode and maybe I need to be worried and concerned for my mental health. But I guess after you have so much confirmation, you start to just relax into that a little bit more and trust it. So that's where I'm at now. I'm just trusting. Don't question it. I trust that actually I won't be able to make sense of the information. It doesn't need to happen immediately. Just because it doesn't happen immediately doesn't mean it's not accurate. Sometimes these things just take some time.
Yeah, and sometimes readings are not as smooth. Like you can get once in a while, you're human, right? So the reading can be a little bit confusing, or the messages come through
Yeah.
confusing. Do you get that? I get that not very often anymore, but I
Yeah.
do get them. And sometimes I'm like, what's going on? What's going
I
on? And then
I
you just have to
definitely
trust.
Yeah, I definitely have moments where it's not as clear with people what the message
Yeah.
is coming through. Or it's very bitty. That's how I would usually
Yes.
describe it whenever I'm reading to someone. And like I would say, it's coming through really bitty. I'm not quite sure why they're bringing it through that way, but I wonder as well whether they're testing me. But maybe there's information, and almost feels like in those situations, there's a lot of information that the spirit realm doesn't want this person to have. So they're
Yeah.
giving them something, but they're making it hard to access.
Mm.
So I guess it's one of those things where we'll never really know the reason why, because I can think, well, my energy's fine. I've just sealed through the reading that I had before. Why is it happening with this person? But then I've also had people where I've had amazing readings with them
Yeah.
before, and the information has just been so clear. And sometimes they come and they sit down, and I'm like, oh, I'm not really getting a lot of clear information here. So I just trust that there's a reason and a purpose behind that. I also sometimes notice that spirit, I think this is probably something that I've picked up more over time, where they don't give information in chronological order either.
Oh
They,
my God,
they
you
can
just
bring
touched on that, Gemma. That was my next question.
Yeah, like sometimes I'll get something for somebody that's going to happen tomorrow, and then the next thing is going to be 10 years down the line, and then the next thing is going to be, next month, and then they'll give me something for 5 years. And I'm like, where are we going? So our natural human mind is thinking, okay, well, we've received this information, it's happening in sequence, but that's really not how spirit work. And I don't know whether that's a deliberate thing, because even when they're not putting timelines on things, and I don't get a lot of timelines unless it's an important timeline to give someone, but I really do find that sometimes they can jump about a little bit, and I'm convinced that it's just to confuse us, because we will naturally think, oh, well, this is going to happen, then it's going to be that, and then it'll lead into this, and we form these little pictures in our mind of how life is going to be, or how things are going to unfold.
I'm
And
so glad you said that, because I find myself as well sometimes where I predict, like I say things, right? And then I'm like, yeah, and I feel like the timeline is approximately the next 3 months going to happen. And then I get an email like a day or two later, and they're like, just happened. Like what you predicted, what you said just happened. And I'm like, what? Am I broken? Like, what's going on? So I'm glad you said it. And it's not
there's
always, but sometimes it can be blurry. Like the timelines are blurry. Yeah.
There's also been times whenever I've given like a prediction to the general population, I've maybe predicted
Yeah.
something to do with, Russia and Ukraine, for example. And I've got a whole load of things, but my human has thought these are all interconnected, so this is going to happen, and then it's going to lead to that, and then it's that, and it's not. Some of them have been almost like individual predictions. It's like, well, this is going to happen, and then we're going to have something with this, and then so it's definitely been a learning curve. But I think that it's people can be very unforgiving because, oh well, you need to be 100% accurate. If you're not 100% accurate, then you're a fraud. And I really, whenever I'm like teaching, I always encourage people to be forgiving with themselves, because you will never be 100% accurate in anything that you do. In any aspect of life, we're human. We are going to make mistakes. We need to learn things. We need to revisit things. Sometimes we will, soar and it will be brilliant. And other times we will fall flat on our faces, because that is just the human condition. Nobody is perfect. We can't run before we can walk. We have to take things gradually. So, I think it's really unfair for people to be expecting a psychic medium to be 100% accurate. And I always would be very dubious of anybody that says they're 100% accurate as a psychic medium, because I just think none of us are perfect. We will get things wrong. We will misinterpret information. We will make assumptions. I've even noticed like spirit can be quite ambiguous whenever
ambiguous.
Yes, I don't even know why I struggle with that word when it first comes out. So I can notice that they can be quite ambiguous, and whenever they bring information through, I sometimes wonder if they do it on purpose, where they bring it through to us and know that our human mind is going to pick it up in one way, but that's not how they intended it. It was like a double meaning, and we have just picked it up and run with it whenever that's not what they meant. And I suppose an example could be, if they were bringing in distance between two people, and it could be physical distance, it could be emotional distance. That's just one example, probably not the best example, but the clearest and most logical one I can think of at this time, where there's two meanings, there's two ways to interpret that, and we may pick it up as one way. So, but again, it's part of spirit teaching us how to be better readers as well. But yeah, we'll never be 100% accurate.
Which is important, and I love how you do. I do that too. That's why I'm telling you. A lot of similarities between us, but not all mediums do that. Okay, and especially let's talk a little bit about the celebrity mediums, the ones that are on TV, and they're like, so how you work and I work is like we will share with our client or whoever we're reading for the symbols as well, because what people don't realize is that spirit talks, they don't give us sentences. It's not all clear. There's symbols, words, objects. It's like a puzzle that you have to piece together. And that's why it's called psychic and mediumship development, because you have to keep developing and you have to be confident that you're connecting 100% to spirit and you are understanding the symbols that are coming through, right? But and it's good because I've seen you on TikTok where you say, I see, for instance, a rose. They're showing me a rose. To you as a medium, a rose might mean love or forgiveness. Okay, for someone else, it might mean something else. Celebrity readings, though, they just blurt out things, and people think that celebrity readings are celebrity readings. Celebrity readers or mediums are celebrities because they just get this information and just blurt it out. That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
And also those shows are probably very heavily edited as well to show the best bits. I had something, and this is probably a prime example. So as you say, spirit really communicate with a lot of symbolism. And I always would say to people at the start of a reading, it is very symbolic. It's not exactly how things are going to unfurl or how they have unfurled. It's like how they bring us in the overarching energies of the situation rather than the detailed paint by numbers, step by step, how it's all going to come together. But there was one reading that I did, and it was a lovely lady actually, and I had brought through her partner who had passed on, and she was still quite young. Now, one of the things that he was showing me was him stood behind her with some horse reins, and I thought that I had never seen this before, and I said, "Oh, so he's in charge." he's showing me, and I told her what he had said, and she started to smile, and she said, no, he used to call me horse. That was his nickname for her. So I had placed the interpretation on it based on what I thought it meant and what I was saying, where actually it wasn't. It was just a literal, this is the message. And
That's a
that
very
all I
good
needed to say.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a prime example how it works, that's why it's important for us to share the symbolisms, because how we interpret it is very different to how someone else is interpreting. And at the end of the day, we're just the messenger. So it's between them.
Yeah,
We're just
exactly.
we're just receiving the messages and just helping them connect. That's it. Really quickly, let's talk a little bit of world events, because we all know, you've been talking about this. I've been talking a lot about the ascension, about the collective frequencies and energy changing, and why right now the world, the universe is purging, and we're just experiencing what we're experiencing. It's going to get worse before it gets better, etc. What are your, how do you see, what's your insight in all this, especially 2024, because 2024 is going to be a very interesting year.
So I haven't been given information specifically on 2024. All I've been shown is the big picture, really, where it's a lot of turbulence that's coming to the surface in order to tear the old constructs down, our old ways of working, and to try and draw people's attention to the universe being unhappy almost. And I've also been told about it being end times. I'm not religious. I don't associate myself with, Christianity or other religions, but one of the things that was being brought through to me was about end times, and it is a biblical time where we have a lot of prophecies from the end times are coming to the surface and coming to reality. I've been seeing a lot of wars and things like that are almost being cleansing for the earth, and I know that that's a really weird way to think about a war, because there's so much death and grief that happens in that time. However, there's also a lot of positives that happen with things like that, because it changes people's perception of the spirit realm, for one, because they're losing people. They want to form deeper connections with the spirit realm and learn a new way of living. They're also having to come away from maybe their previous way of life, come away from the convenience products, Starbucks, drive-through, the Uber Eats, whatever it might be, and bringing us back to living off the earth, growing our own vegetables. Also taking us where people are coming together and forming stronger bonds and communicating. And I was being shown families sitting around a table doing puzzles by candlelight. There was no iPads in sight. So I get a lot of things like that, and I've been shown a lot of turbulence around politics and a lot of the political systems coming apart, even in Britain as well. So
it's coming very, very soon.
So, and whenever we think of things like that, sometimes I think, it's just going to happen, and it's going to be like just one big disaster, and it's going to happen over a really short period. But sometimes these things happen so gradually that we don't even realize that they're happening. One of the things that I was being shown is in terms of the war. Like, I don't know whether whenever I was being given the predictions on war, I had made the assumption that it was Ukraine and Russia was all going to escalate, and that was very wrong on my part, because I wasn't also expecting the Israel situation. There's a lot of, we don't really know exactly how it all is going to escalate and where it's all going to stem from, but I know that it definitely does rock over into Europe. That's very much what I'm being shown, and things escalating in Europe and Britain and the US. It goes across multiple nations, so there's definitely things are getting worse, but it's really to bring about a better future. It's to change our way of thinking and our being in order to bring us to more of a spiritual existence, really. So there's a method in their madness, as uncomfortable as it is for all of us. But there is a method in their madness. And sometimes we do need to have hard times in order to change as people. And it's, whenever we look back on our own lives individually, the times that we have really changed, it usually comes off the back of, a really tough time that we've had, or a really hard experience, or some significant discomfort. So it makes sense that actually to change a nation, we have to cause disruption and discomfort and inconvenience to people in order for that change to actually come about, and for people's thoughts and mindsets to change.
I 100% agree. And from what I've been shown is like next May, April, May, I'm getting things are going to start changing to the positive. Things are going to change. But until then, there's a lot of hardship and sadness and a lot of discord as well, societal discord, political, that's going to happen, but we're getting there. So, I mean, we always have to look at that. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, and we have to remember that. And I agree with you. I didn't see the Israel war coming. As soon as the Ukraine situation happened, I got 72 from Spirit, and I said, oh, this is going to be a 72-day. Initially, I thought it was going to be a 72-hour war. That Russians are going to, and then I said, oh no, I got it wrong. It's 72 days. But now I'm starting to think maybe the 72 that I got had to do with this war. We'll see.
Quite possibly. Well. Yeah, exactly. And it might not have even been connected to a timeline. Maybe it's connected to something different. I was being told that it was about 6 years, but I don't know if that's just the Ukraine and Russia aspect of it. But I was being shown something that went, will go on for like quite a long period. But timelines do change. I've definitely noticed that, and I have got stuff wrong myself whenever I've been very adamant that no, it's happening then. They're telling me it's then, it's happening then. So I have got stuff wrong. I'm not perfect, but I do try to use my best judgment and give the messages from a place, from my heart. It's never to instill fear in people.
Right.
It's to help prepare people and help frame their perception, really, and to help them understand why things are happening. Because a lot of people will come to me because they're really scared of death, and they're so frightened. Well, what if I die? What if I lose my family? What if this happens? And I can understand people being afraid, but at the same time, I don't have that fear. I don't have the fear of losing a person or me dying. But I think because I'm working so closely with the spirit realm as a medium, the same as you, my perception of death and this existence is possibly very different to what everybody else's is. Not everybody, but possibly very different to a lot of people, because actually my life is different, and I'm working with them all the time. And I'm thinking, actually, if I'm called to go across, it seems pretty cool over there. So I'm going to be quite happy with that. Yeah. So I don't really have that fear. Yeah.
I was fearful of death until I started doing this.
Yeah, I definitely have never been fully comfortable with it. But now that I'm on this path, I'm absolutely not worried.
I'm like, take me. I mean, if I didn't have children, I'd be like, because you think who you're leaving behind pretty much. You're a mom, I'm a mom. So it's like, but I mean, I don't know. How old is your daughter?
She's 9.
Oh, my son is 9. So they're still young, they're still like, so my relationship to death, or the concept of death is not a word I like to use, because it's not death. It's not the end. It's actually the beginning of your actual existence, which is in a different form. So it really helps. And I do love that there is a lot more people have access to this knowledge now. There is a lot of information out there. There are books, there are mentors, there are seers, medium, psychics, teachers that teach about these things. And I'm happy about that, because people can now truly appreciate the life that they have, the life that they chose, because you choose your path, you choose your life. And I feel this is what's going to help the collective, because we have been working so hard. All of the light works have been working so hard for the last years now, that finally I feel that we're starting to see the fruits of our labor, meaning that people are a lot more open and awakened and accepting and receptive as well.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
which is amazing. I don't want to hold you up because I know you've got a client coming up. You've got a reading. Really quickly, please share with everyone where they can find you, your website, your TikTok handle, everything.
Yeah, okay. So my main website is gemmalonsdale.guru, and that is the same for my TikTok and Instagram handles as well. So you can find me on there. I'm probably more active on TikTok than I am on Instagram. And I also have the mediumshipacademy.com as well. So if you're interested in any learning, then that's where you'll find that info.
Everything will be linked down below in the description box anyways. Thank you so much, Gemma, for doing this. I hope you can come back. I mean, it would be nice to do, maybe we can do like a tandem, maybe collective reading at some point, which just
that would be amazing. I would love that. I would really love to do that.
We'll do that very soon, maybe before the holidays, the Christmas holidays as well, if you've got time, because I know this is the busiest time of the year for us, because everyone wants their year ahead readings. There's just so much going on, but I'm sure we can find some time to do this again.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Yay. Well, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure being on here, and just thank you for inviting me, and I hope that everyone has enjoyed listening.
And really quickly before you go, I wanted to share something with you. My grandfather died 3 years ago. He hasn't come to me. He hasn't, like, I wasn't able, he died in Mauritius. So it was just before the pandemic. It was impossible for me to get on a plane fast enough to go see him or even go to his funeral. And while we were talking, he was, I don't know if you felt him or saw him, but I did see my grandfather around you. He liked you. He was drawn to you. And I was just so like, at some point, I was like, I'm going to get emotional because I couldn't connect. He wasn't coming. He only went to my dad in his dream twice. And I'm like, and I was pissed off because I was like, I'm the medium. Why can I not connect with my grandfather? And why does he go to my dad? My dad is a skeptic, you know? But he did today.
That's lovely. You know what that is? That's probably he knows how much I would love to go to Mauritius.
maybe he felt that. But if you do, I'll give you all the tips. I'll tell you how you're going to have a full amazing experience, because everyone does the touristy stuff. And there's a lot more to Mauritius than just the touristy stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, thank you so much. And I hope that you have a great day.
You too. And a wonderful weekend as well, as it's coming up.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.